The United Nations General Assembly votes overwhelmingly in favor of a humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza. The COP28 climate summit has ended in Dubai with a landmark deal to transition away from fossil fuels. Britain's Prime Minister sees off a party revolt to win the vote on his controversial plan to deport asylum seekers to Rwanda. The United Nations General Assembly voted overwhelmingly on Tuesday evening to demand a humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza. The 193-member world body was 153 in favour, 10 against, with 23 abstentions. Unlike Security Council resolutions, which last week saw the US veto a bid to back a Gaza ceasefire, General Assembly votes are not binding, but are an important barometer of world opinion. The vote also shows the growing isolation of the US and Israel. Earlier, US President Joe Biden hosted a Hanukkah reception at the White House, telling guests Washington will continue to provide military assistance to Israel until Hamas is gone. But in his harshest criticism of Israel, he warned it was losing support around the world due to its indiscriminate bombing of Gaza. And he suggested Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu change his far-right coalition government, which is largely opposed to the creation of a Palestinian state. Meanwhile, Israel has continued its bombardment of Gaza, with the main focus on Khan Yunis in the south. There's also been fighting in Rafah near the Egyptian border. The World Health Organization says the health system in Gaza has gone from 36 hospitals to only 11 since Israel launched its bombing mission. The Hamas-run health ministry in the enclave says Israel has killed more than 18,000 people. Israel began its strikes after Hamas fighters launched a cross-border attack, killing 1,200 people and taking 240 hostages, some of whom have since been released.
Hearing no objection, it is so decided.
Enthusiastic applause and a standing ovation as a landmark deal is agreed on at the end of the United Nations Climate Summit in Dubai. While it doesn't specifically mention a phase-out of fossil fuels, something more than 100 nations had wanted, it does call for parties to contribute to efforts to transition away from fossil fuels in energy systems in a way that will achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. President of the conference, Sultan Al Jaber, said delegates had worked hard to secure a better future for people and the planet. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has faced down rebels in his ruling Conservative Party to win a knife-edge parliamentary vote on his latest plans to send migrants to Rwanda.
The ayes to the right, 313. The noes to the left, 269.
The government says the scheme is designed to deter migrants from crossing the channel in small boats, something Sunak and his cabinet have made one of their key priorities.
The treaty that I signed last week puts beyond legal doubt the safety of Rwanda. It provides the basis to end the merry-go-round of legal challenges that have second-guessed the will of Parliament and frustrated this policy, this House and the desire of the British people.
Sunak took to social media to say that the British people should decide who gets to come to their country, not criminal gangs or foreign courts. That, he says, is what this bill delivers. Meanwhile, an asylum seeker on board the Bibi Stockholm barge, which houses migrants off Britain's Dorset coast, is believed to have committed suicide. The three-storey vessel houses people awaiting the outcome of their asylum applications and has the capacity to house up to 500 men.
Far-right Polish lawmaker Grzegorz Braun uses a fire extinguisher to put out candles on a menorah lit to celebrate the Jewish holiday of Hanukkah. The stunt took place as MPs gathered to hear newly elected Prime Minister Donald Tusk's inaugural speech. All major parties condemned Braun's actions, saying there would be no tolerance for anti-Semitic or xenophobic behaviour in Parliament. Braun was fined and excluded from the day's proceedings, with the parliamentary speaker saying he would report the incident to prosecutors. Tusk called the incident a disgrace and said it must never happen again. The events delayed a parliamentary vote to approve his pro-EU government, which he later won. The new cabinet will now be sworn in by President Andrzej Duda on Wednesday.
Tensions are rising on the eve of this week's EU Leaders Summit in Brussels as Hungary continues with threats to block important decisions. The Vice President of the European Commission, Vera Jourova, is sharply criticising a campaign by the Hungarian government launched last month against the EU's executive body. The billboards show Commission President von der Leyen alongside a message that says we don't dance to their tune.
This billboard campaign is outrageous and scandalous. And this campaign is offending my boss, Ursula von der Leyen. It's offending me as well, and I think that most, if not all, the members of the college.
The Commission became the target of a campaign that was part of a national consultation that levelled serious accusations against Europe's political agenda. The EU institution denounces the accusations.
I saw the things which are very verifiable lies. For instance, Brussels wanting to abolish public support for utility costs. It's a lie. Brussels wanting to abolish the Hungarian windfall tax. It's a lie. It's for the member states to decide. For instance, something juicy, Brussels alleged support for Palestinian organization reaching Hamas. It's pure lie.
The controversy adds fuel to the fire of an already tense summit that begins on Thursday. Hungary is threatening to block the opening of negotiations with Ukraine on its EU membership and also a financial lifeline to help the war-torn country.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky arriving at the White House on Tuesday for talks with President Biden. It's Zelensky's third visit to Washington since Russia's full-scale invasion of his country more than 21 months ago, and there's a lot on the line. Additional US aid for Ukraine is being blocked by Republicans who want the money linked to stricter security at the US-Mexico border. Zelensky is hoping to persuade them to open the coffers.
Less depend on aid, and we are moving.
As COP28 draws to a close, a draft deal last night called for countries to reduce their consumption and production of fossil fuels. It's a conversation that's dominated talks, and while some have criticised the text in that it wasn't robust enough, calling for the phasing out of fossil fuels, COP28 President-designate Sultan Al-Jaber said it was a step in the right direction.
We have made progress, but we still have a lot to do. You know what remains to be agreed, and you know that I want you to deliver the highest ambition on all items, including on fossil fuel language.
Nations will now provide the UAE with their thoughts amid calls for multilateralism and collaboration. As the two-week summit wraps, so do the periphery events that have taken place at the many pavilions on the Expo City Dubai site. And there were congratulations for Azerbaijan for being chosen to host next year's COP29. Now all eyes will be on next year's host city and maintaining the momentum in the global fight against climate change.
German prosecutors have formalised charges against 27 people arrested last year on suspicion of belonging to a terror cell and plotting a coup d'etat. Authorities say the group had created a quasi-governmental organisation and was preparing to storm the German parliament and arrest MPs in an effort to topple the government. The suspects reportedly belong to the Reichsbürger movement that rejects Germany's post-war constitution. Prosecutors say they were planning to negotiate a post-coup order with Russia.
The night train connecting Berlin to Brussels and Paris is running again for the first time in nearly a decade. The cooperation between the German, Austrian, French and Belgian train companies is paving the way for a more climate-friendly Europe.
Wir freuen uns, dass nach 9 Jahren es wieder einen Nachtzug nach Paris gibt. Dafür haben wir lange gekämpft als Back on Track. Und jetzt sind wir hier und können die Abfahrt des ersten Zuges begleiten.
The demand for the sleeper trains linking major European capitals has seen seats fully booked for weeks in advance.
Natürlich muss man auch beim Rollmaterial, gerade jetzt hier auf dieser neuen Relation, sehen, dass man hier in den nächsten Jahren dann auch modernere Züge bringt, um eben konkurrenzfähig zu sein zu anderen Anbietern. Und da ist man aber, denke ich, auch mit dem Nightjet der neuen Generation dann auf einem guten Weg.
Germany's Deutsche Bahn has suffered from a lack of investment, with Austrian railways far outstripping the quality of its trains.
It was a pleasant trip, so it's quite comfortable to not have to worry about catching the flights or something like that. And only disadvantage is they're slightly late occasionally, as it's today.
As demand for night services increases, train companies will be under pressure to invest in infrastructure if they want to attract more business customers.
Fall asleep in Berlin and wake up in Brussels. This year, sleeper trains are making a comeback. And with climate change dominating headlines, train companies are putting down tracks to connect European cities with one another. But will that be enough to make travelling more about the journey than the destination? Liv Stroud on the sleeper train for Euronews.